Hello and welcome. You're watching a special broadcast by Republic Business. As we know, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is all set to present the Union Budget on 1st of February. The marathon pre-budget meeting has already taken place with various stakeholders ranging from industrial bodies to trade unions. So what should be the focal point of Union Budget 2025 this year? To throw light on that, we are having with us Dr. Chandrajit Banerjee, who is Director General of Confederation of Indian Industry, CII. Thank you, Mr. Banerjee, for sparing time out and joining Republic and sharing your views.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me, and always great to be with you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, let me begin by asking you a question. We know in the Union Budget of 2024, when Finance Minister presented the budget, there were certain focal points of that budget as well. And we know employment creation was one of the focal point of the last budget as well. And when we see the CII's 7-point agenda for the budget, we see that the CII has put a lot of thrust on employment creation. So why this year also you want the employment generation as a focal point of the budget?
No, it's just not only employment generation that one is focusing on. Employment generation in a country like India, where our population is 1.4 billion, will always be an important issue. And through the employment generation, so to say, pivot, one can look at a large number of areas where the budget could focus on. That is on, the sectors which are employment generating sectors, etc. But the main focus that we see, that we would like to see, which will also augment employment, the main focus that we would like to see in the budget is the focus towards growth. So the growth-orientation or a growth-oriented budget is going to be this year one of the most critical sort of unexpected outcomes of the budget, is what I would like to really put it in a nutshell. And of course, employment will never be an exception to that.
Right. And sir, I was going through the 7 key agenda that you have pitched. One of them is integrated national employment policy that you have pitched for. Can you just take us through that? What exactly you're pitching for when you're talking about integrated national employment policy?
So, when we are talking about, there is, we wanted to bring, I'll give it to you in a more sort of a simple way. We had earlier, if you recollect, talked about national integrated employment, where we can have at one place a sort of a one-stop shop, so to say, as far as employment is concerned. So that's something that we had sort of focused upon in this budget, that in this 7-point scheme that we had brought up to you. In this, one of the things that if you really look at the number of recommendations that we have made as far as that 7-point agenda that you are talking about, I'll go by one, so to say, in this. So what we had suggested, let me go through those 7 points very quickly. One, of course, what we had proposed was that integrated national employment policy, which you spoke about, and that will really be something which could subsume under its ambit the new slew of employment generating schemes which are being currently worked upon by various types of ministries. It's not only ministries, there's actually even the state governments that are working on it. So all of that can come under one sort of thing, in one sort of a policy, the national employment policy that we talked about. And besides a unified sort of a policy, we could also look at building a single integrated employment portal. Now that is going to be a very, very critical thing that makes it easy for people to find out a job, so to say. And that could also be, the national what we could call a national career services. That's what we had called, where all data, all types of data can flow into this from ministries, state portals, which gives the sort of the availability of job. And in the same context, what is actually very important is to look at if we look at an universal labor information management system under the National Career Service that would provide information like about employment opportunities, projections, job classification, future of jobs that will come out, the type of skill demands, etc. The second, of course, what we had proposed was a sort of a new section because there was something called the 80JJA, which was there earlier. So new section in lieu of that 80JJA, which will encourage employment. And the new provision that should continue is deduction from the gross total income, like we had this chapter 6A. Deduction from the gross total income, which is available even if a taxpayer opts for concessional tax regime. It can be made available to any taxpayer who sort of carries on business or profession, and they can be liable to any types of tax sort of an audit. So the third part is to stimulate job creation. What we had said. Targeted support to employment intensive sectors, and that's a very critical sort of a recommendation that we have been making is jobs which are today in demand, the sectors which are in demand globally today. We have opportunities, say for instance on the construction sector, tourism sector, which has a global sort of this thing, make visa sort of a free entry into India excepting for some countries. Textiles is a very important sector where we can see a lot of global demand, and we can get low-skilled, manufacturing. That is very important. That's something where we can see a lot more possibility. The other area that we are seeing are rural areas, and the government where we can consider launching a sort of an internship program in some even in government offices in the rural side, I would think, for college-educated youth. The fifth area that you had seen that we had talked about was on the women participation in the labor force. And that can really boost the Indian economy. Female labor workforce participation through certain types of sectors like the caregiving caregiving sectors, so to say, could be really critical. One of the things that we had said was for women to find more employment. One example I will take is if we can it'll boost consumption demand also. It will also boost female employment. Is in the gig workers, say for instance, if you really look at giving up an additional incentive for women who sort of can buy two-wheelers, a special segment to them, or a special concession to them, or a special support to them. That itself will see them. We can see a lot rolling, lot happening. So the last two was sixth was the rolling out of the labor codes in all the states, and last, of course, and not the least, is in many parts of the world we are facing labor shortages. India is being able to send a lot. So if we can have a sort of a proper entity through which we can work together to see how these opportunities are arising globally, that those type of skills focus, we will see a huge amount of employment getting generated. So that was the 7 areas that we had talked about.
Absolutely. And sir, also I came across that CII has also pitched for boosting consumption. That is also one of the areas that you are asking Finance Minister to address in the Union Budget. That is reviving the consumption story of India. And for that, you have asked for an income tax cut for a slab up to 20 lakh rupees per annum. Can you just explain that? And also the question related to that, since you are focusing on the aspect of boosting the consumption story, are you accepting that there is a threat to growth, so that we need to revive the consumption as soon as possible so that our growth is not endangered?
Yes. So as I said, what we look at this budget is a budget which is going to be the most growth-oriented budget. At this point in time, I would think that India is the opportunity in the Indian economy, if you see, for us to reach what we have said in the earlier budgets also about Viksit Bharat by 2047. If we are really looking at that, we have to grow, and year on year, we have the capacity to grow at 8% plus. And for that, we have to have a budget which will be completely focused on growth. And one of the things that can augment growth is consumption demand. And consumption demand can be actually augmented or rather boosted through many areas. It's not just the income tax, which I'll come to, which you have asked, but also through many other ways that we would like to see the consumption demand being boosted. I think you spoke about income tax, and therefore I'd like to focus on it first. Say, for instance, number one, if you really look at 20 lakhs is at least still 20 lakhs. The lower income groups and up to 20 lakhs, if you are able to give that leeway in terms of reducing income tax, it'll have its effect even on the next categories. But it is important for us to see that segment whose consumption pattern has changed a lot after COVID. They would be able to, and they'll have greater cash at hand to increase the consumption, which will in fact lead to a higher investment demand too. So another area is that we had spoken about is the reduction of excise on fuel.
Yes.
And since fuel is indeed a universal sort of an input, a cut in the excise duty on the fuels would be very, very critical to put more money in the hands of our people for boosting consumption. The other thing that we have talked about is the inclusion of something like a consumption voucher, that too also for the lower income group. And that's extremely important at this point in time because we've seen inflation, which has got a lot to do with what's been happening globally. These vouchers could be designed to spend on some of the designated items, specifically some goods and some particular services, and that could be valid for a stipulated amount of time. Even if you look at 6 or 8 months window, the beneficiary could be the beneficiary people. The segments could be those who are in the Jan Dhan sort of account holders. That itself will increase a lot in terms of consumption. So
right.
I think consumption demand will be a critical area.
So basically, if I just summarize what you are asking for in the budget, and as I can summarize, is that you are asking for the two focal points. One is employment generation and second is reviving the consumption story, right?
Yes, of course. And basically the consumption story, the employment, and a growth-oriented budget, if I may repeat that's going to be so critical and important, because unless we have a growth-oriented budget, a consumption boosting budget, a budget which it focuses on tax simplification, ease of even filing taxes for individuals, a budget which comes back to focus on infrastructure, if I can say, the huge focus that India was having and is still having on infrastructure, which has driven our growth. And I think to see the infrastructure spend growing, which brings in the investment demand and employment, I would think that these are very, very critical expectations out of the budget.
Right. So this is what we have talked about, the expectation. Let me turn to the different aspects. Since you have been the part of a lot of ministry consultations so far, pre-budget consultation you have been a part of, and some other key meetings as well. What sense do you get? Do you think that finance minister will go for an income tax rate cut this time? What is your sense saying?
I can't predict that, but I can only recommend and bring out in our recommendations. But today I see there are a lot more consultation between different segments of the society, industry being, of course, one very important bit. We are on a business channel. Business can lead to a lot of employment. Business has a role towards economic responsibility. Business has a role to even see to it that there are There are, focus on creating better work environment, better pay environment, all of it, and that leads to a strong economy. So what I see is the expectation of a partnership between business and our policymakers to see how we are able to contribute meaningfully towards creating a strong growth-oriented economy, an economy where we can see more jobs coming in. And one of the things that I see that there is a tremendous appetite in the government, the tremendous desire in the government, because which one feels when one discusses with our policymakers, sees them make statements, is that business would be able to play that role by creating wealth opportunities and also livelihood for the people of India. And for that, I think there is a strong focus on making ease the ease of doing business, looking at opportunities through FTAs to deliver ease of cost of doing business becoming easier, ease of taxation, ease of filing returns. All of it are very, very critical areas. And I would see, because one feels, because that type of understanding being there and appreciation, we should expect those to come into the budget in certain forms.
Right. So, sir, let me put this question in a different way. Do you think that this is the right time, considering the revenue stream of the government? Can they go for income tax cut?
I think, given the revenue stream of the government, I also suggested this entire thing about, the cutting off the excise on the, on our fuel, say, for instance. I think if you cut income tax, you will get a boost of revenue. That's the biggest thing. I would imagine there could be, because that would boost consumption demand. Consumption demand itself will give raise to higher growth in even tax revenue. The taxation, the tax revenues, which have been pretty buoyant, will itself even go up.
Right. And so next and the last question that I want to ask you, we have talked about income tax, we have talked about reviving the consumption story. What about the capex? I think you have asked for 25% capex hike this year as well. To 11 last year, the capex level that the capex was announced at, you are asking for 25% hike, if I'm not wrong.
So, I mentioned just now, one of the things that one would like to see is the focus that we have seen on capex growth since COVID tremendously. That had actually helped the Indian economy. And anytime, a continuous focus on capex over a period of time is important in India for us to see Indian economy become stronger and stronger in the globe. Yes, we have talked about an increase in central government's capex by 25% and a capex support to states by 10%. And we think that this will itself be very strong, a strong India, strong tool to see that investment demand, private sector investment sort of crowding in, and given higher priority that if we can in the budget to infrastructure, especially in the rural sectors in the states, we will see a lot happening in terms of growth in the country.
So last question. We know every year when budget comes and finance minister is done with presenting the budget, one question that arises every year: what was there for middle class? आम आदमी के लिए इस budget में क्या था? So I would ask you this question: can we expect something for middle class this year? Is this budget going to bring a wide smile on the face of the middle class this time? What is your hope?
I would think that this entire thing of tax cut that we have talked extensively in this meeting just now with you would be an important element of what can be there for middle class. I would even think that if we are looking at and this would also trigger other sectors to grow and the middle class to be benefited
tremendously is, say, for instance, if we look at affordable housing for in the urban sector also, that itself could be a very, very important focus that we can give for the middle class. So government considering reducing income tax at the lower end of the income spectrum and to increase disposable income itself will boost consumption, help the middle class. Another point which I had mentioned a little earlier was the excise duty cut in fuel. That itself could be a very, very important. One thing that I would expect from the budget, because the government has been very strongly focused on making life easier for people, is the ease of paying taxes. That also helps the middle class a lot. So how do you pay your income tax returns, etc., simplification. If we keep doing that, which has started in the last few years, I think these are areas which makes the life of the middle class much, much easier. And it's very critical for us to do that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Banerjee, for sparing time out and speaking to Republic Business. And I wish all the expectation that we are talking about right now transpires into reality on the February 1. And then again, we will speak to you and talk about what was there in the budget for the middle class. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.